empowerment and autonomy of women and the improvement of their political, socio-economic, and health status is a highly important end in itself. The participation of women in conflict resolution and mediation efforts around the world is an enormous force for good. But women and girls are also often the most vulnerable in armed conflict situations. Empowering women and promoting women's rights have emerged as a part of a major global movement, and it's continuing to break new grounds in recent years. But despite a great deal of progress, women and girls continue to face discrimination and violence in most parts of the world. In developing nations, girls and women are often seen as less valuable and more vulnerable than the boys and men. Instead of being sent to school, they are often made to do domestic work at home and or married off for a dowry before they are adults. As many as 12 million underage girls are married off. And most often, women face threats to their lives, their health, security, cyber attacks, and well-being due to being overburdened with work and lack of power and influence. So in realization of this, some principles are entrenched in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and United Nations Security Council Resolution of 1325, which underscores the impact of war on women and their integral role in creating a peaceful, just society. So these resolutions call on member states to take special measures to protect women and girls in armed conflicts, particularly from gender-based violence, rape, and other forms of sexual abuse. Welcome to the program. My name is Muti Olori. On today's episode, we will beam our searchlights on the security and empowerment of vulnerable women. My guest on the program today is a humanitarian, social entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and the first CEO of an international development charity organization located in Toronto, Canada. The foundation supports the well-being of vulnerable women, children, and youth in 6 African countries, namely Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, the Republic of South Africa, and Zimbabwe. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my friend and my guest, Sydney Zemura Bernard.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for the kind invitation.
I know it took you quite a lot. You came in for a program in Nigeria, and here we are capturing you, to have this interview with us.
Thank you.
Before you leave.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually leaving tomorrow, but this is sisterhood. I knew that I wouldn't leave Nigeria without doing this. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I know you're involved in a lot of work with vulnerable women and girls and all that. A lot of people there's this misconception about what the word vulnerable is. So maybe we'll start from there. Who is a vulnerable woman or a vulnerable girl?
Oh, most definitely. A vulnerable woman and a vulnerable girl simply means that politically, if a woman or a girl is vulnerable, means they are not having a voice, a contribution to what happens around them with pertaining to the political process. So they're either, for those over the age of 18, they don't participate in voting, which is sharing their rights. There is no democratic process that they're participating in. Economically, as we know, women are the most marginalized, especially in the continent of Africa, anywhere else around the world. Most of them survive under 50 cents a dollar, yet they are the most employed. They make up the largest group of employees, especially in the farming sector. So economically, when a woman cannot support herself, then that means that she's vulnerable, because then she has to look for other means to ensure that she takes care of her well-being, the well-being of her families. And then again, we know that in Africa, most families are led by women. So if there's no economic sustainability in the family, then everybody else suffers. And then on a social standpoint, this is where we talk about health, we talk about their security. When women are threatened because of gender-based violence, not having the right to decide about their well-being of their bodies and their choices, that's being in a vulnerable state.
And people focus more on the social aspect,
Yes.
leaving out the economic and the political aspects that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at some of the factors that contribute to the vulnerability of women, especially in Africa.
Oh, patriarchy, of course. We can speak about it for days. It has to start at the top. We have to look at the biases that have been founded in our societies. That's what we believe. There has to be a change. We know that within the SDGs, SDG 5 talks about gender equality, the empowerment of women and girls. And in the African context, because we know that our leaders, I believe, don't quote me on this, but we have less than 5 female leaders in the African continent who sit as presidents or prime ministers. Statistics, right? So we need to do more to ensure that we elect or we recognize that women can lead at the same rate as men. So right there, when we don't have women that are represented in decision-making tables, then for sure we're going to talk about political vulnerability of women.
So it's quite a lot, but the major one is the fact that we live in a society that is male dominant, and women seem to have bought into this process to say, okay, it's a man's world, and I think I'm comfortable for where I am. But with, like you mentioned, we do most of the work.
Yes.
It's not just a woman leading now. Even when a man leads, the woman is the one caring for the family. Now, you have footprints in about 6 countries that you work with. What are the peculiarities of these countries in Africa? And I'm sure, like, putting into consideration relatively to Nigeria, Ghana, and some of the other African countries, what are really the similarities in the issues of vulnerability? Because I know some countries are not in war, but at the same time, what are the similarities?
It's like I said, I truly believe that it's those patriarchal beliefs and traditions that in the 21st century we still fail or still hold on to because of the belief system that men should be the ones that are leading, the women belongs in the home. But I believe that it also has to do with the education, because the more we exert the knowledge out there to say that, and it has to start from the root, it starts from the very beginning, that elementary education, you start educating girls at the same rate you educate a boy, all the way going up to the top. Then that's where we're going to create equality. And I think that's what is going to cause a shift, which is why right now there's this imbalance because of our tradition and our cultures. More boys were put into school because the priority was boys are leaders. The girls have to stay home. So the more our families concentrated on educating the boy child, the girls were left behind. So then with society, as we see, we find that it's the same, whether you're in the southern region of the continent, you go to the west, you go to the east, it's really just the same. But also there is also a bias of, leadership style. Leaders often want to hold on to power, and they often want to hold on to the control, and so that limits opportunities for women, especially, to be able to enter those spaces, and it also creates intimidation most times. So I've found that in the more I've traveled the continent of Africa, I've visited other countries, the work that we're doing, it's the same everywhere we go. The policies really that are, the constitutions in these different countries and the policies are often similar because of just this one belief and bias that a man belongs in leadership, and women, we can be put in leadership, but this is not the time for a woman to be Madam President.
We're made to support and do all the work, while the men just come in and take the position as leaders. So it's really a huge problem, something that's entrenched even in our parenting style. I mean, girls are consciously bought dolls. And the boys are bought guns.
Exactly. And boys are put, I remember when I was growing up, it was always the boys are going to do the mathematics, the science, the accounting work.
For the emotional ones like literature. Go to the creative ends because, you're tender, you're soft, and you're very emotional in the things you do. So what are we going to do?
You know what? I think the change is happening. I truly believe the change is happening. I know we were seeing the change, though it's really not that tangible as we can touch it. But if you look at what is happening today, I know I mentioned that there's a few women leaders in the African continent, but we should be celebrating that they are there. We have former, for instance, in South Africa, we still have one former vice president, Madam Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. We also know that Mama Zuma was at the AU, sitting as the AU chairperson at one time, and we have some of these phenomenal women that are now coming up to take leadership spaces. So that's encouraging. It doesn't mean that things are not changing. They are changing, but I truly believe that they can change at a rate that's a bit different. But it has to take that advocacy. Empowering women means that we speak more about the importance of really bringing women to the table, the importance of also realizing that women can lead. But it's stripping down those cultural biases that have always been there, but also for the men to want to work with us. Because if they believe that we can as well be in leadership spaces, then it makes everything easy. And we're starting to see, for instance, in South Africa, I believe now it's a 50-50 type of parliament. So that's really great.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
To South Africa, to Rwanda,
yes,
and some of the other countries doing
They're coming up.
marvelous well,
yes,
putting women into the space. Now, my worry is about the girl child. Now, these women fought hard, to be where they are. In Nigeria, we know people like Sawama, people like Dogoyaro who have fought. They were imprisoned, because they wanted their voices to be heard. Why the traditional thing is you're only seen and not heard.
Yes.
Now, how do we help our young girls coming up to have a different mindset? Now, I work with young people a lot, and recently I went during the International Women's Day, I had the course to go to a school, and talking to these young girls, I was like, okay, what are your ambitions? What do you want to do?
Yes.
And surprisingly, they tell me, oh, they're just going to school so that they are empowered to support their husbands.
Oh, wow.
When they get married.
Oh, wow.
So that they'll be there at home to help their children while the man is out there working. So in 21st century, going to the 22nd century, we still have a lot of young girls who reason like this. How do we reorientate their mindset? How do they come out from that place, seeing the older women as, they are just making maybe so much noise, or seeing them like role models, or I can be like that, not just looking at them from a distance, and still have the same mindset that my education is to support someone. Yes.
It's the narrative. I think we should definitely change the narrative. You use yourself as a phenomenal woman who's doing amazing work here. So I believe that with young people in the 21st century, we can use our experiences as women that are in leadership spaces. We can use our experiences to say that if I can do it, which means that you can do it. It's all about, we go back to on Monday the 11th, it was the International Day of the Girl Child. And we had a program that was running during the She Forum, and we had so many learners that were there. Most of them were girls. And one of the things that I keep reiterating as I go around talking to people who are there at the event is we kept saying to those girls, your dreams, no matter how small, they are valid. But it has to start with the narrative that is happening at home. It's a mental shift. It has to be stripping down again the traditional biases, the cultural biases at the home, where even the fathers are talking to the young girls and letting them know they're valid, letting them know that they can be in an office as a director, they can be a president, they can be a leader. We should change the discussions we have with our children from, you are going to school so that you can be empowered to be a mother, and then your husband goes out and does the work. Because then if this generation that's coming after us is empowered, which means our future generations are also empowered. So if we are there and they are seeing us as examples, and they are seeing us come together as women during International Women's Day, seeing us standing up for each other like this to say as women, this is what we are doing, then it also encourages them. But it's also, there has to be a lot that has to go into the policies that each of the governments or our countries have enacted to strip down those policies that are oppressional to the girl child. We cannot be living in 2021 working on a constitution that was written in 1950. So it has to also go back to the policy decision tables, where more women need to be brought to the table to look over those policies that have to do with them. because you cannot come and change policies that have to do with young people if you're not youthful and you don't understand the things that affect young people. And we need to bring young people to the table. And so, intergenerational dialogues is really what is needed, I believe, as we move forward, so that we can educate, we can inspire, because when you have knowledge, then you're able to make different decisions with your life.
Oh, well, we have knowledge, but sometimes I wonder what we do with them. I'll take a short break. And I'll be right back. And when we come back, we'll be looking at what your foundation is actually doing, in Africa. Wow, it's still Total Woman on 84 TV radio. And we have been talking about security and empowerment of especially vulnerable women and girls in Africa. Please don't go away. I'll be right back.
There's a wind of change blowing over Nigeria, and it's coming from the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. If you want to find out how TED Fund is bringing the Nigerian government, industry, and the academia together to drive a new knowledge economy, tune in to this station every Wednesday at 8 p.m. for TED Fund, the paradigm shift. It's informative, it's innovative, and it's exciting. TED Fund, the paradigm shift. Proudly produced by 84 TV Radio.
Welcome back. Still Total Woman on 84 TV Radio, and Mutiolore is my name. My guest, Sydney Bernard. We have been talking about security and empowerment of women, especially vulnerable women and girls, child. And she's been doing a lot in Africa. Right now, your foundation is working with about 6 African countries.
Yes.
And so what are the major empowerment programs that can help these vulnerable girls and women? You remember we identified the vulnerability in 3 major areas: socially, politically, and economic.
Yes.
But people talk about the social one.
Yes,
a lot. More than the other ones.
Yes.
So, and I think the other ones is what holds the power.
Yes,
that men do have over
Absolutely.
us. So let's look at some of the major empowerment programs that can help.
Absolutely. Education, first of all, because, an educated woman means that future communities, current community, and generations, they'll prosper. No one can take away the education that you have. I'm a very firm believer that once you educate a child, a girl or a boy, then our communities are set for life. So with the organization, we equally sponsor and support the boy child and the girl child to ensure that as they progress in life, none of them are left behind. Yeah. We have economic empowerment programs for women that we've been running for about 9 years. They are focused we have that running in 4 countries. That include farming. We work with about 900 farmers in Malawi. They do rice farming and they work with local partners on the ground. But with that as well, because we want them to be empowered to understand why they're actually running the farming businesses, we teach them financially what it means to be economically empowered, what that money means to you, so that we don't go back and be the organization that is an aid, but we are just there to help them to flourish, to then start up their own businesses. And then there's skills training. What the farmers do is then they move to different villages to train other women on the same. So it becomes a propelling belt where, when the program started, it started from about 40 farmers and now it's grown to 900, and they're in 18 different regions in Malawi. And we did the same in South Africa as well. South Africans love and they're very proud of their traditional jewelry. And so we thought, let's work with women right there. And we started in KwaZulu-Natal with about 20 women, and we want the women to let us know what it is that they believe would help them. We are not going in to use our westernized thoughts on what can work in Toronto, Canada, but cannot work in KZN, on that community. And so the women said, no, we're very good with our hands. We like to bead, we like to adorn our traditional jewelry. And we started with the 20 women, and again, we emphasized educating them financially. What does it mean to own community bank accounts? When you have that money from the beads that you're going to make and sell, what do you use the money? How do you move the money around yourselves? But we also wanted them
returns and profits.
Absolutely.
Because you find cases where women make money and they end up using the money to take care of the house, to
take care of the husband. And that's one thing that we came across a lot, because again, going back to the biases of why is a woman working, most of the women we're pulling out of our programs most times because the man would make a fuss as to why is she spending time coming together with a group of other women, putting together the beads, and then they go to sell. So once the man felt threatened and intimidated by that the woman is making money, they felt disrespected in the home. They felt, oh, I'm no longer a man because the woman is bringing money into the house. But along with that, we saw that program grow from one province in South Africa, and now we're in 4 provinces. But we also moved it out of South Africa into Zimbabwe and Eswatini. And 4 years later, we were able to start a social enterprise that is run by the women organically from South Africa. They've been financially trained. They manage the social enterprise. It's registered in Toronto, Canada. All the produces are sold online, but it now feeds everything that they're doing. And we now have over 300 bidders in Zimbabwe and South Africa and Eswatini. So that's really empowerment there, where for us, we emphasizing on education, we're emphasizing on economic empowerment for the women. And then socially as well, we run programs that have to do with health, because healthy women, you cannot live a sustaining life if you're not healthy. And we often know that, again, there's biases to many things that women we deal with if it comes to our bodies or the prevalence of HIV and AIDS, especially in South Africa, which has the highest rates of infections on HIV and AIDS. So we've run family planning clinics, we've run mobile clinics that go to different villages to test, to raise awareness and to educate women on their bodies, but also to raise the advocacy about your body and it's your right.
Yeah. And that's where you meet a lot of obstacles because patriarchy again.
Yes, patriarchy.
We just believe that once a woman is married,
yes,
everything is owned
by the decision
someone.
of the husband. Yes.
Okay, so let's. That brings me to the issue of insecurity and forms of abuse that women face, and it's really much and predominant now when we talk about poverty because women are not economically empowered, and so let's talk about some of the cases you've had to handle in this area.
A lot, and unfortunately the COVID pandemic has brought about what we call the shadow pandemic with regards to gender-based violence, because you can imagine when COVID came, a lot of women, regardless whether they were in happy marriages or not happy marriages or just relationships, they had to be in their homes or wherever their places of residence with either people that were a threat to them or threat to their lives. But also many women lost out on their jobs. And remember, we spoke about how much they used to earn, less than 50 cents a day. So when COVID came, they no longer could go to work, which means they had to stay at home. So that meant that they're now driven into poverty. And in those families where there isn't a male leader that was able to provide, it meant that the homes that are led by women suffered the most. And we had a lot of gender-based violence cases where women were suffering under the hands of their loved ones. And so that has continued to grow and really to cause gaps. And that's what I find we've been dealing with a lot, in the sense of it's been the worry about staying safe, not to catch the virus or not to die from catching the virus, but it's also my safety is threatened in my home or where I stay in my place of residence because I'm being sexually abused by the people that I'm staying with, or my partner is abusing me, or there's other types of abuse that is happening in the home, financial abuse, and emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, so there's different types of cases that we've been hearing, but most of it, the outcry was, I cannot feed my kids, and not being able to feed my kids, I've fallen into being emotionally abused by my partner. So it took a shift, even with us as organizations, to figure out how do we continue to ensure that these women are staying safe, because as well, the social services had to be dealing with a different type of threat that they'd never dealt with before. So when those phone calls were going to different agencies to say there's a woman that's reporting something that's different from only knowing a physical type of abuse, it was how do we counsel, how do we help someone who's saying they're being emotionally abused in the home or being financially abused. And so that's what we've found during especially the time of COVID. And unfortunately, it's also brought about a lot of cases of forced child marriages during the time of COVID, because then the advocacy has gone down, and it left a lot of girls exposed to that.
But the most important thing is a lot of organizations actually rose up to the occasion.
Yes,
To see what they can do to support. Women's shelters came up, sprung up one place or the other. But how can organizations like yours and other ones that are not really as big as yours, but they really want to do something for women, how can government or other donor agencies, or how can we help? How can we bring these issues to the fore? What needs to change so that women can be more secured and empowered?
Partnerships. When you talk about the SDGs, one of the SDGs that are there within the one to achieve by 2030 is partnerships, and which is what brought me here to Nigeria, because we realized that regardless of how small you are, how big you are, I couldn't have done the work that I would aspire to do in Nigeria if I hadn't met Ini, who runs Shiforum, and they also work on other different matters that at the end of the day, we're all trying to empower and support women and girls. So I believe that at the end of it all, organizations should really come together and find a way to work with one another, to cross-train as well, to exchange ideas. And that's what funders do. Usually, most times, funders would work with other funders, other foundations that pour funds into organizations to see how they can assist with different varying programs. So for us, NGOs, charities, grassroots organizations, international CSOs, is also working with our governments, because intergovernmental institutions do support NGOs. So it's also having that knowledge of, where you can go to and whom you can work with, and then we come together to share our ideas. And because we're all working on one common ambition and goals. So it's very, very important, I think, at this point, if we really want to see the achievement of the SDGs, that we prioritize the partnerships, regardless of where we are in the world.
So it's one thing to say we want this, it's another thing to put action to words.
So we need action. Absolutely.
I totally agree with you.
Action. Thank
you so much, Sydney, for being my guest.
Thank you for
and sharing so much. I want to say well done for the work you're doing.
Thank
you. I hope that we'll be able to do much more together. Like you said, partnership is key.
Yes.
If we want to see the woman grow and secure, then we must, big, small, we must come together. Irrespective of our colors, we are all women.
We're all women.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. So empowering women and girls is key to economic growth, political stability, and of course, social transformation. We want to make the world a better place? Then let's work together to empower the girls and save every vulnerable woman by making the world a safe place for all. Thank you very much. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.